You're listening to the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Hello? Is that the famous astronomer, Sir Patrick Moore?
It is, very much so.
Any news on the space front?
Quite so. Elon Musk has just designed and developed 5 gigantic, state-of-the-art rocket ships. All members of Parliament, along with the American Senate, have first-class tickets aboard them, you see. They're told they're going to the moon.
Told? Where exactly are they going, Sir Patrick?
The new anomaly discovered recently astronomically. A huge black hole.
Twin Souls is brought to you in association with the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Your host, Philip Kinsella. Now, I have to tell all of you, we have a wonderful lady on board today by the name of Debra Jayne East. Now, Debra is the author of Radiance, Love After Death, and she wrote this book after experiencing a near-death episode. She's also had a UFO sighting when she was age 12, and she's also an empath, and she really reaches out to people who have experienced any elements of the paranormal. So welcome on board, Debra. It's really lovely to have you with us.
Philip, I have been looking forward to this. I'm very excited to be on your show, and I am much a fan of you and your brother Ronald's work.
Oh, and we are of you. We've heard so much about you. As we said earlier, you've got a lot of contacts and you have a lot of experiences. So I think what our listeners would like to know, Debra, about you is how did this all start with you? How did you get involved with the paranormal?
Well, it's very strange. It's sort of by way of my family in the beginning. When I was 12 years old, me and my sisters, I had at that time 4 sisters, we were all watching television late at night. And my father heard the dog barking, and he went to the door and he told, the dog's name was Barry, said, what are you barking at? He told him to be quiet. Well, he wouldn't stop, so he went out on the porch and he came back in and he said, everybody come out here really quick. So we all went out there and went to the edge of the porch, and about 1,000 yards away, coming over the hill, was a lens-shaped UFO about the size of a tractor trailer. It was silver in the moonlight. It was a full moon. We could see very well. It had rotating lights going around the center. It moved very slowly. Our dog was looking up in the air at it. The dog could hear it or something. I don't know. Uh-huh. We couldn't hear a sound, but it was looking up in the sky. So we watched this UFO craft for about 40 minutes. There was no mistaking what it was. And after I saw that, there was no one that could ever tell me that UFOs didn't exist. So that's how I first got into UFOs. And later, as I got older and in my 20s, paranormal things started happening to me. So I guess we can all blame it on that night when I was 12 years old and we saw the UFO.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So you viewed the UFO for about 40 minutes. I mean, what kind of impact, Debra, did it have on you? I know you were a 12-year-old lass, but what kind of impact did that have on you at the time when you viewed the UFO?
Well, the first thing that it does to you, it makes all of the hair stand up on your head and your arms. You feel a prickling feeling all over your body. That is telling you this is something you have never seen before. And all of my family, we were in shock. We couldn't say anything. And, my younger sisters, that's a great deal right there because they talked all the time, but we all were stunned into silence. And all you can do is stand there with your mouth open and watch this. You're afraid to look away because you might miss something. Well, I looked up at my father at the end when it was moving to the north of us, and it was going out of sight. And I might add that our dog followed it along on the ground, still barking at it.
Uh-huh.
I asked my father, I said, we got to call somebody, Dad, and tell them what we saw. And this sentence changed my life. He said, we can never tell anybody because they'll think we're crazy.
Wow.
And that filled me with sadness because I thought, why should telling the truth make you crazy?
Yeah.
And that was always very sad to me. So after a few years, I sort of forgot about that. I know my grandmother had told us, that she had saw strange things when she was young. She lived in the same area. Mm-hmm. Well, in 1987 in Withville, Virginia, now I was already married and away from home, was the huge UFO flap, one of the biggest ones in the United States. There were over 3,000 sightings within a couple of weeks, which is basically the most of any other sighting that I've ever researched. What happened was Danny Gordon, who was a radio show host, started getting calls on his show. He would allow people to call in and, just say what's going on. And he started getting all these calls about, we're seeing some strange lights around here, and we've called the sheriff and we've reported it, and we keep on seeing them. So he thought they were prank calls at first, but after a while he called the sheriff, and the sheriff verified that it was actually going on. So Danny went with another friend, and they went out in the area where sightings had been made to see if they could see these sightings. Well, they waited for about 3 hours, and they were getting ready to leave when all of a sudden a huge UFO the size of a football field came into their view. Well, like I talked about with my family, they were in shock, and they didn't even think about taking pictures. They were just so stunned, and after it was over, they went, oh my God, we didn't even take pictures. They hated themselves, so they went back another time, and this time they did get images.
Oh.
Well, he later wrote a book called Don't Look Up, and which was a really good seller. But at that same time, my parents, who lived only a few miles from Withville, heard all of this on the police scanner, because back then, there was no Facebook, no computers. A lot of older people, they would listen to the scanners, to see what was going on.
Uh-huh.
So they heard all these reports of UFOs and everything. They heard the sheriff's department talk about it. They were quite concerned. Then one night of one of the most major sightings at one of the malls in Withville, our dog that we had, a smaller dog that we had growing up, just started barking. And so my dad started to go downstairs, and he said he got a feeling of dread in him, like, don't go down there. And the next thing he remembered was he woke up the next morning. So he sort of forgot about, the dog barking and everything. So after breakfast, he decided to walk outside. And then he remembered, the dog was barking last night. Well, he came across 3 triangle-shaped images burned into the grass. Like, the grass was really green. But these 3 marks, it looked like something had burned these images into the ground. They were landing marks.
Oh.
So they had taken a picture of them. They were interviewed. They had a little visit from the Men in Black. So they kept these pictures all these years, and we talked about it for a while, but then, family, life goes on. So when I retired, which was in my 50s, I got those pictures out and started looking at them. And next thing I knew, I was online trying to find matching images like that. And it took me several months, but I did. I found UFO landing marks. One of them that was similar was the ones taken at Rendlesham. I spoke with one of the guards that was involved in that and showed him the images, and he said they indeed looked like the same landing marks. So that really got me into ufology currently. And so I started doing a radio show called Skywatchers, and after that one, I did Notes from the Underground, which I still do. So,
wow. I mean, the Men in Black are normally associated with UFO sightings, and I think also that the feeling of dread that that you explained with regards to certain individuals, certainly that is a case. And it seemed to me like, well, I'm sure it does seem to you also, Deborah, that is a case of missing time, isn't it?
It sure is. And another thing that was odd is 4 or 5 years after that, my father started having severe headaches. And finally, he had to go to a doctor, and they x-rayed him, and they said he had a mass within his sinuses. So they eventually decided to do surgery and take it out, and the doctor said it was a strange piece of something. He didn't know quite what it was. He said it was amassed in like sinew, like a gristle. And he said, that's been in there a long time. I bet it's been in there since you were young. And then I thought to myself, oh, I bet that was an implant. I bet that's what that was.
Yeah.
So I later found out, in my 20s, I had an abduction experience. And I was going to bed one night, and all of a sudden my room was flooded with the brightest light you could imagine. It was like so bright I couldn't even look at it. And I was terrified. I put my head under the cover. And I was a grown adult, so that tells you how frightened I was.
Mm.
And then it was a few days before I started remembering bits and pieces of that. And all right, what happened was after I saw the bright light, I hid under the covers. And the next day, I did go to the window. I thought, well, there's a light out there. But I was on a second-story house, and behind me was all trees. There's no roads, no cars, no houses. So I thought, how could somebody get a light that bright and put up to the window? I mean, it filled the whole room. It was so bright and radiant. I had to hide my eyes. I mean, it was terrifying. And what I remembered eventually in the next few weeks is I walked into the living room, and there were 3 beings in the living room. They were short. They had some kind of uniforms on. I asked them, I wasn't afraid of them at all. My vision when I was looking at them was it's like if you've ever had anesthesia, you're sort of a little bit loopy and you can't really focus on an object. And I was trying to look at their faces, but it was almost like they didn't want me to see details, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, sure.
And so the questions I asked them, I first asked them where they came from. And I could see a hologram image of a location of stars and stuff. I didn't recognize where it was at. And I said, well, that doesn't really help me. I said, where did all this get started from? You coming to Earth. And they told me telepathically, they didn't speak, but Samaria.
Mm.
And so I thought, well, that's an interesting word. I've never heard of that before. And after that, it's like I went through through the ceiling. It was like my body levitated, and I went to this other place. And I don't remember much after that, except for when I was coming out of it, I thought to myself, I've got to remember this word. I could tell that my memory was being erased, I guess you would call it. I thought, I've got to remember this word. So I kept on saying Samaria, Samaria. And the more I said it, the more my mind was blanking out. So the last part that I said, Samaria, Samaria. And I thought, I'm going to remember that word because that's the key to all of this. I've got to remember that word. Well, I forgot the word. The only part I remembered was that it started with an S. So for 8 years, I could not remember that word. 8 years, I could not remember. And then there was a television show, and I was watching it, and they talked about Sumer, which is the cradle of civilization.
Yeah.
And about the Sumerians. And then I thought, oh my God, that's what they said. That's the word. So that really put a passion under me. So I started studying the Sumerians and all the mythology related to that. That's what inspired my first book, Radiance, Love After Death, was the Watchers, the angelic beings that are mentioned in the Book of Enoch.
Mm-hmm.
So when my sister found out about my book, she called me and she said, well, Debbie, I had the same experience. I saw the same light growing up. And I dreamt that I was floating in the air. So I thought, oh, my gosh. And she knew nothing about me. And then this is the strangest thing. You know how when you're growing up, things happen to you, you know, with your siblings, and, you know, you forget about them.
Mm-hmm.
But when my sister and I talked about that event, all of a sudden remembered other events. I remembered 2 different times that my sister started screaming in the middle of the night. And one time me and my sister, Sandra, we were in one bedroom, and my other sister, Irene, she was in the opposite bedroom, and she started screaming. And my dad came up, and she said someone was at the window. They were trying to get in. And so I thought, man, that's terrifying. And another time at a different house, the same thing. In the middle of the night, she started screaming, and she said, they're coming to get me. She said, there was someone in here. And when we thought about that, it dawned on us that was probably nights that they were attempting to abduct her.
Yeah, it certainly seems so.
So you go back over your life and you have all of a sudden knowledge about things that you sort of wrote off, you know, in your mind, and now they make sense. So it's really unique how our minds work to put things like that in a place where they can't harm us or where they can't frighten us. We sort of bury them under all kinds of other memories.
Yeah.
And
that's
how most abductees do. I'm sure you spoke to many of them, and the ones that were abducted during their childhood, you know, for a long time, they don't remember anything.
Well, it's interesting, Deborah, because you mentioned what you're describing is absolutely bang on with other people's experiences. And what is really incredible is the white light, or the lights that are seen. This seems to be some way, I believe, like some other researchers, of actually anesthetizing the individual. And then, of course, they come in, and the other part is how they're able to, you know, infiltrate solid material. So with regards to memory, do you think perhaps that because you yourself or whomever is taken out of our current time sphere, that the brain is not able to locate that memory simply because, like an astronaut, you've been taken out into a different sphere entirely? So, you know, I do believe most definitely that what you've experienced here is incredible, and quite, I'm feeling myself getting a little bit nervous listening to your narrative because it matches many other people's. So in terms of that, did you find after these experiences, Deborah, that you started to, become more psychic or empathic? Did you discover that at all?
I sure did. And let me say, everything that you just said, Philip, resonated in my body. I felt it from the bottom of my feet all the way up my whole body. It resonated with me. You are spot on. And I think the white light is part of the way that they make us pliable and make us be able to handle the shock of what we're trying to see. And the first thing was only really awake maybe 3 seconds after the light, if it was that long. But what flashed in my mind was when, as a little girl, I read in the Bible, whenever they saw an angel, it said the first thing they would say is, "Fear not," because there was a blinding light. So, I thought, well, maybe that's what this is. I think that sometimes these extraterrestrials use what is in our mind to make us feel safe, because a lot of children, sometimes they will say they saw a play buddy or someone that was wanted to be friendly with them. They don't always say it was an extraterrestrial. So I think it's amazing that so many people even have any memory at all of being able to do this.
Yeah.
And the psychic abilities didn't start until later. At first, you don't realize just how much you synchronize with other things. It just seems like coincidences. It takes a while. It doesn't happen overnight. The first incident that happened is actually when I was in my 30s, late 30s, and I was going through a difficult divorce and very depressed. I've been married for 18 years and just was having a hard time. And honestly, I was suicidal because I was that depressed. And every night I was dealing with the UFO thing. I would go look out my back door and I would gaze at the stars and think, why don't I feel like I belong here? Why don't I feel like I know everything? There's so much out there. I feel like I'm on the tip of knowing something, but I don't know what it is. I was just very, very puzzled. I had no idea why I had all these strange feelings. So one evening I decided that I would just end my life. And I took my boys in a car, went over to my daughter's house, and was going to leave the boys there. And I was so hurt and so lost. I thought, I'll just drive off a cliff. I'll just wreck my car. I'll just do something because I just can't live in this world. So I stopped the car. My boys jumped out and they ran into the house to see her. And I opened the door. And I don't know why I did this. I don't know why I did this, Philip. But I immediately reached down into the grass. Now, her grass was only about 3 inches. It had been mowed a couple of days before. I couldn't see anything. I don't know why I reached down into the grass. But my fingers pulled out a small, white, heart-shaped stone.
Oh.
Now, this stone had a little crack in it. It was like misshaped. So I held that stone in my hand and I looked at it. And then I heard a voice. And I actually turned around when I heard this voice because it was an audible voice I heard. And it said, even though your heart is broken, it is still a heart and you can still love again. Well, as strange as that sounds, that rock saved my life. All of a sudden, I felt revived. I felt renewed. it was then that I decided to start writing books and researching and doing that full time. And I just knew without a shadow of a doubt, if I wrote a book, it would be published. And I don't know how I knew it. I call it the knowing.
Yes.
And the knowing.
That is absolutely correct, Deborah. I mean, this is amazing because, your accounts and your descriptions and your experiences are so fantastically, amazingly similar to so many other wonderful souls on this planet. And I know and I can understand to a point that we go through the most awful experiences during what we call an abduction or the viewing of UFOs. But at the same token, we change. Something changes. It's almost as if we've awoken. And I believe that. So without jumping too far ahead, Deborah, you wrote a book called Radiance, Love After Death. Is this the book that you are talking about that you wrote after your experiences with the stone?
Yes, it is. It was a fiction book, but it was based on the near-death experience, and it was also based on different things that I had experienced that you might call paranormal. And, the Watchers, if anybody is familiar with them, are fallen angels. They called them in the Bible the Grigori. And so that's what a lot of the book is based on. That got my appetite for writing. And I thought, if I can write this book, then I can do anything. So it's
sorry to interrupt, Deborah, but you yourself had gone through a near-death experience. From what you're saying and from what I'm feeling with this, is that to the point where you very sadly was coming to the end of your physical life, that you basically had been transformed. There was another alternative power. So in effect, you had actually had an NDE.
Yes, I did. I was, they were doing routine surgery on me, and they didn't know I had AFib. And when I was in recovery, my heart rate got up to 225 beats per minute. And I felt myself rise above my body, and I saw the nurses run out of the room. I could see my daughter in the lower room, a few doors down, and I could hear the nurse telling them my daughter started praying for me. And the next thing I knew, I was asking the Creator, I said, will you let me stay a little while longer? I just want to help people. Would you let me stay? And I woke up 24 hours later in ICU. I was there for 8 days. And I feel like when that happens to you, Philip, when you come back, you're changed. You're really changed. It's like your DNA is activated. I know your body secretes hormones at death that can activate your pineal gland. And I think that's what it does. You come back with something extra. That, along with the UFO experience, sort of activated the empathic abilities. All of a sudden, different things would come up that it's like you just know stuff. And I decided that I would do a radio show. I asked for guests. I got like 30 replies, but the only one that I knew was telling the truth was Derek, which is, he is the author of Alien Contact, The Difficult Truth. He told me a story, and I immediately knew his story was true. It's like you just get, it's like a vibe. You have a vibration, it's like you get a image inside your head. It's like the truth has an image.
Yeah, sure.
So very, very hard to describe, but it's puzzling at first when that happens to you. I had a mentor who helped me a whole lot. It's actually quite frightening at times because you don't understand why you're able to see things about certain people, but you do, and it makes you feel freaky. Does that make any sense?
Oh, Deborah, trust me on that one. Totally. But you know what? You and I and everyone else, we enjoy freaky. It's wonderful.
Yes, we do.
It's wonderful.
It's strange. At first you think, is this a curse or is it a gift? Sometimes it's a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
But what I've found out is it is a gift. It is a gift that you have to learn how to manage. You have to learn how to use it and when not to use it. Mm-hmm. It's not something that you just click your fingers and you look at A, B, and C and like you see on some of these television shows and you can tell everything about them. Mm-hmm. It's certain people have energies. They have energies that transmit, and you can feel them when you get close to them or when you speak to them. Oh. Things will start popping up, in your, people call it your third eye, and they resonate with you, just like as we were speaking earlier and you were telling me your views, and I thought, oh yes, I know he understands because I felt that. I felt it resonated through my body, and I could tell that you had understanding. So yeah. It's an odd thing, but very common with people that are abducted. Very common.
So you met Derek Tyler, and obviously Derek is the author of the most amazing UFO books, and so guide us, Deborah, through what happened there.
Okay, well, Derek had basically wrote this whole book in the 90s, and he was very privileged to run a chat room in the early days of the computer when they didn't have all these wonderful graphics that they have now. Uh-huh. It was a chat room because he found out that there was a lot of people online that had UFO experiences. And Derek had saw a UFO in, I think it was in the 80s. And he saw it up close. He saw it for 45 minutes in his hometown. And just like myself, he said he knew after that there was no mistake. He knew that UFOs were real. So he started a chat room. And before he knew it, there were hundreds of people in that chat room. And so he had to start referring some of the people in there to Bud Hopkins, which wrote the book Missing Time.
Yeah.
So through this chat room that he had, he met people that were in the military that were involved in projects, and he became a confidant of two of these people. So he wrote the book at their request because they had signed a non-disclosure agreement. They could lose their life, go to prison, or even be killed. So they couldn't, but they wanted someone to know, so they told him about it. He wrote the book, had a publisher, sent it to the publisher. It was getting ready to be published, and he got a knock on his door. And I won't say who they are, but they were standing there. They had on dark sunglasses, dark suits. You get the meaning.
Yeah.
Right. And basically their message was, if you publish this book, we'll make you disappear. They don't come out and say they're going to kill you. They just say, we'll make you disappear. So after that, everything was hacked on his computer. His phone was bugged. It caused him to have a nervous breakdown. So he put the book on a shelf in his closet, and it had remained there from the late 90s to 2015. Mm-hmm. So when he told me his experiences and that he had written a book, I thought to myself, I must help him publish this book. It's important. It's very important. And so I came all the way from the East Coast up here to help him research and write that book. And so we worked on it. We edited. I did all the promotion. I got him on radio shows. He got on Coast to Coast, and his book went to a #1 bestseller. So that's That's how we got started with that.
Amazing work. And I think that you, Deborah, deserve a lot of credit, not least because you helped Derek Tyler with his work, but also for what you've been through yourself. And, you know, it's so amazing to connect with like-minded souls like yourself, who have a wider perspective and understanding. And obviously, you know, the bravery of coming forward to, you know, tell your story and to bring this out to the general public, which is even more important because you're actually helping other people heal, for those people who have had similar experiences but have no one yet to go through, because the general consensus is that a lot of the population still do not believe that we are having interactions with interdimensional or extraterrestrial entities, let alone there being life after death. So, you know, hats off to you, Deborah, for a lot of the work that you're doing and continuing to do. So with regards to the wonderful Derek, and I know that we're going to have him on our show soon, with regards to your understanding of what we would call the UFO phenomenon, may I ask, please, Deborah, what is your thoughts on that? I mean, you talk about the cradle of life and that the extraterrestrials have stated that they are from
Sumer. It's called the oldest civilization, the cradle of civilization. And the people there recorded, you know, on stone, these people or these watchers that came from the sky. They didn't call them extraterrestrials. They didn't have that terminology. But what it said was that they helped them to learn trades. And so, you know, that's how they did back then. They recorded these things. They had images of UFO craft. So they were just telling me they've been here for a long, long time, longer than we even realized that they have been here.
Wow, that's incredible. Amazing. And, you know, I've got to say, with regards to your work now, Deborah, where are you at now? What is you know, taking up most of your energy at this moment in time?
Well, two things, actually. One is my goal is to take the stigma away from being in ufology, especially as a woman. You know, you don't really find many women who do this field because of the ridicule. It's very sad. And I would love for other women to do this because I think they add an interesting perspective. If I could say anything to a woman out there, the first thing I would say is, if you do this, don't attach it to your ego. Don't claim ownership. Don't mislabel the evidence. And don't worry about the click, because that's very hard. You know, when I was promoting Derek, it's very hard to get on a major show or to get invited to a big conference because of the clicks. And they are all used to hearing the same things a lot of times, you know, people that have been in the field for years and years. But you know what? This generation, these last 20 years, there are a lot of people that have experienced some really incredible experiences, like Derek, like Paul Sinclair.
Yes.
I mean, when Paul first came out, he was not well known in the field. And look at him now. He's written 3 books. He's got a 4th one coming out. He does paranormal and UFOs. I mean, Paul's work is amazing. It's amazing. So my goal is to help more women to get into this field, and you know, that they could follow the evidence and they could not be caught up into just being another pretty face. You know what I mean? I'll tell you somebody I like Erica Lukes, and I like Chase Klutsky. There are 2 women who are trendsetters in the field, and I like that. But, you know, I can't name you very many more.
No, I mean, there's a few that have been really instrumental with my twin and I, and that's Dr. Irena Scott and Kathleen Marden, and we also have Sasha Christie here. Paul Sinclair is an amazing researcher. We met him recently at the conference in Pontefract here in England, and he's an amazing guy. He's very busy and he's very committed. And yes, he has spoken very highly of you, Deborah, as well to us. So
we share cases when we're stumped, you know. We work together. You know, that's what I love about Paul. He's not territorial. He will discuss work and we share information. That's how we learn. I really do detest people who claim all the information is theirs, like they own it. It belongs to all of us, Philip.
Yeah.
The truth is for all of us. So, you know, that's just how I am.
And that is wonderful. And one of the things I have found myself personally is that when you are drawing parallels or new theoretical models to the experience and bringing some aspects of the soul or the other side or creation, and how immediately this seems to rile a lot of people. But as I say, you know, fresh new ideas, we have to look outside of the nuts and bolts syndrome, the box that we've been sitting in for decades. And it's really good, Deborah, because you brought a fresh perspective to this experience. And you're quite right. I don't really know that many female investigators, stroke researchers, stroke authors. And I think it's really wonderful because, you know, women are very sensitive also to these alternative forces. They're very perceptive. And I think that's important within this field. So, you know, you deserve a medal for coming forward and still fighting your cause. So it's very much appreciated.
Well, you're so kind. And I'm very excited to tell you this next thing that has been keeping me busy. This is the first time I've ever spoken about this publicly. Oh. You are the first one to ever know about this. And I have been thinking about this very carefully about how I word this because it's of the utmost importance. I have 2 books that are coming out. The first one is called Synchronicity, Message of the Heartstone, which is more of my current story in ufology. And the other book, I just don't know where to begin. You know, you meet a lot of people being in the field. And, you know, I was very blessed to be able to meet Derek Tyler, but I met someone else 2 years ago. And I had no idea when I first met this person just how it would change my life. But I started noticing someone online, and every once in a while they would give an answer. And those empathic little things started, you know, going off in my head. I could tell that he had other information. I could tell he was holding back. Mm-hmm. So I thought, I really want to talk to him. So finally I just came out and said, could I interview you? And so that's how we started talking. And I've known him for going on 3 years now. We've been working on the book for 2 years.
Wow.
And yes, it's what I can say about this is this person that I met, this is his story. This information came when he was a young boy. He is now in his mid-70s. He is ill with bone cancer and ALS, which is like Stephen Hawkins has. Before he dies, he wants this information to be recorded for posterity somewhere. And I can tell you now, with everything in my soul and my being, this man has the utmost integrity. He is remarkably intelligent and a true hero. Yeah. His father was a member of the operatives in charge of a secret military base here in America. Mm-hmm. And this base was run by the military industrial complex. I go into detail in the book, you know, about where his father worked, but it's one of the alphabet agencies, if you want to put it that way. And this young boy was able to go to this complex sometimes with his father, and he would also overhear when his father and other people that his father worked with would gather around in the house and they would talk. And so, as a young boy, he heard all the stories. He heard all the things that they knew. So he happened to go along with his father. He was injured. He went into the building and there was a UFO craft there. And as a little boy, he was very excited, so he ran in under the craft. And when he did, he was injured because of the energy field of the craft. And that's how he met the extraterrestrial. And the title of the book is called The Pilot, Conversations with an Extraterrestrial. And this is his story about speaking with this pilot over several years and information that the pilot gave him. It also chronicles information from his father, experiences he had when he was an adult being abducted, and a vast amount of knowledge of the inner workings of the military-industrial complex. And one of the things that he told me recently, he said that he asked his father, he said, well, when can I tell people, or should I tell people about this stuff, that I've experienced? And he said, can I tell you after you die? Because his father was implicated in a lot of things that people probably wouldn't like. Mm-hmm. And his father said, well, you have to wait till after I die, and then at least 50 years, because after 50 years, there probably won't be a lot of the people left that his father knew, because of age.
Yeah.
So it's been 50 years, and my friend is very sick, and so this is his last will and testament to bring this information out. And I'm just
beautiful. It's beautiful, Deborah. Do you know, I know you're very touched and listening to the way that you're expressing this from the heart and the soul. Do you have any plans? Is the book coming out soon? Have you got a plan for the book to come out? Or
yes. Yes. The book will be coming out within the next 2 months. I'm actually getting ready to get a date from a major radio show over here in the United States because they're booked up, and they told me when it was ready to let them know they'll give me a date.
Well, I can assure you, Deborah, that you'll be coming back on our show because my brother and I will buy that book and we'll absorb every page, and then we'll have you back on again. So I know you can't give too much away because with any project, it's close to your heart before the release. And that sounds like some amazing literature and also some amazing knowledge that we can glean, because we're all advocates in this. There's no one, within the higher establishments of power who are willing to help us. But what's amazing is that those individuals that have been linked to those military industrial complexes, most of them want to speak. And I think it's amazing that you've been selected and linked.
Well, the thing that I promised him, and I promised him with the utmost of my heart, is that no matter what information that he gave me, I would publish it just exactly like it was. I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't add anything to it. It would be all his words. And I have kept that promise.
Yeah, it's like Parker's, the Pascagoula case that Philip Mantle brought out. Philip Mantle didn't touch anything of that book. He let Calvin Parker write it the way that he wanted to write it. Well done.
Well, it's important because a lot of people, like I talked about earlier, in ufology, there's a lot of egos. And sometimes you can tell people about information and they'll say, oh, that's not possible. That's crazy. Well, the information that I have received from my friend, just imagine, Philip, if you could ask any question you wanted to know about extraterrestrials, anything at all, and get an answer, how would that make you feel?
That would make me feel really like a kid in a sweet shop. I'd have so many questions. I think I'd bore the teacher. I think they'd have to take a vacation by the time I finished with them, but that would be absolutely awesome. Wow.
I was able to ask any question, and he gave me an answer. Any question I wanted. And he has paid a great price for this, a great price. Not even his wife didn't know, his children don't know. As far as I know, I am the only person he has relayed this information. I've kept it to myself. I've guarded it. That's part of the reason why I can't go into more details, because it is extremely injurious to some of the people involved. But, most of them have passed away, but the military-industrial complex is still alive.
We are very honored for you
on
our show to be able to tell us. And I also feel and know from you that, although that we have the most amazing people on this planet, that your perception of conscious survival is absolute, that, we all play a part within this life's journey, which here is short. And I also understand that, that most other people find hard to accept is that the UFO journey is perhaps a very tiny part of a bigger plan. So that's what I feel inside myself. And my brother and I are very honored that you're able to, let this out, give us a little bit of a taster of what's to come. So we certainly will be looking out for those books. Definitely, Deborah.
Well, I deliberately chose you. And the reason why is, like I said, I'm a fan of your work, and I know that you are both empathic. And I know that you would, as I was talking to you, that you would be able to know and feel the passion and how this work has affected me.
Yes, absolutely. And I can assure you of one thing. Like yourself, we and Derek and Paul and my brother and myself and many others, we're very guarded, and we're only for truth and love and light. I know that love and light sometimes is a little bit like wishy-washy in the world of other people, but we mean that from the heart, because we're looking for those answers, those amazing answers to the questions that we seek, that the powers that be are unwilling to address. So it's left to us good people to try and dig this up and to bring this to the attention of the public, to make them aware that, look, you're not just a physical, biological machine with a sell-by date. You have purpose. You have order within this evolving exploration of the soul. And I think the UFO phenomena seems to, it grabs you, and once it grabs you, it won't let go. It's like a drug, isn't it? It just pulls you in. And I think that's the change.
Well, it is. I mean, all of these years, I just could not stop learning. I had to learn everything. And part of the reason why I feel my research is important is I'm aware of my own gifts or talents or whatever you want to call them.
Uh-huh.
I am able to notice patterns. I notice patterns. I notice things in the collective as a whole. I can tell when I can read something, just like I saw that picture of the landing marks. I clocked those away. It was a few years, and all of a sudden I started looking up images again, and that's how I found them. I don't give up. Once I'm looking for information, I will find it somewhere. I am able to see a pattern, just like yourself, with all abductees. They all have this same journey, so to speak. And I know there's a big rift in ufology, and that's with the starseeds and the abductees that have negative experiences.
Oh, yes.
And I just want to say, there are good and bad extraterrestrials, just like they are humans. And Derek happened to meet the bad ones. Well, I have heard about a good one with my friend, a definite good one. I have not had a good experience with being abducted because, first of all, they took me against my will. They didn't ask me. And they did it, to my family, and it terrified us when we were children.
Mm-hmm.
and they took things from us. They took things from us that they shouldn't have taken. Mm-hmm. So, I had, not long after I had that experience, I was pregnant, and I had a miscarriage, or I just went to the doctor, and they said, they gave me a check, and they said, "Oh, you're not pregnant." Even though I tested positive for pregnancy twice, there was nothing there. Right. So there are things that I feel cheated of. But through my friend, I have an amazing picture. It's almost like I'm able to make sense of why they do that now, the bigger picture. And it's bigger than anybody even realizes at why they do that. Now, there are some aggressive races, we won't even talk about the reptilians. We won't even talk about them. They're not my area of expertise, but...
No, neither mine either.
Right.
The Greys, I've been exploring for a very long time. We can only base our assumptions upon theoretical application. My brother is the one who deals with the reptilian, or looking into them, out of his own journey and curiosity. But, we're all important keys into this unfolding plan of discovery, of awakening. I feel that it's absolutely amazing that, we have good souls like yourself, Debra, who are really out there. And I think it's amazing. And we're very honored to have linked. And sometimes, some researchers come and go. They come into the loop and come back again. But there's always something that pulls you back. And I believe that yourself as an empath, that, these things are very important to your life's journey. And it has been an incredible journey. Well, at least you're not going to say you've had a boring life, Debra. Okay?
It's not been a boring life. And I will tell you this little tidbit. It's something that came from my knowing, I guess you would say. These extraterrestrials, they don't give themselves titles. You know how we call them reptilians or Pleiadians or all this kind of stuff? Those are man-made names. They don't call themselves what we call them. So I know they look at us and they're amused. They're very amused at us because, we can't just accept things sometimes for what they are. We have to label them a negative or a positive, but they're all individuals. All of these creatures, beings, whatever you want to call them, they're individuals, and they have their own personalities, and they do their own things. Some of them are controlled by others. Some of them are a slave race. But there are some that are definitely here to help preserve humanity and to learn. Yeah. And that is the message that I want to get out by putting out the pilot and about writing about my journey. It's not always been a pleasant journey for me. It's been embarrassing sometimes, to be asleep and to wake up screaming, and to be able to sometimes feel things in the room that nobody else can see. All of these things are sort of strange and weird and freaky. But you know what? I think that after having these abilities, after all this long, if you didn't have them, you would think, oh, man, it's so boring. It's so boring. Like, oh, man, I wish I had that gift. I could tell if this person is telling me the truth or not.
Oh, God love you. And, we're coming, the hour's gone so quick. We're coming to the end of the show, but it's been a real delight. And please, our offer stands. We would love to have you back on the show again to discuss, because I feel that, there's not enough time to discuss your amazing journey and your experiences. And of course, you've got so much more to say. So we'll have to book you in for another program. And so tell the listeners, Debra, how they can get hold of you, please.
Okay, I'm on Facebook. My book, I have 2 Facebook pages. One is for Synchronicity, the Message of the Heartstone, and the other one is Notes from the Underground. And, of course, you could look up Debra Jayne East, too, but Notes from the Underground is where I'll be putting up the release of the book, and the The book covers will be going up soon because I'll be starting my pre-promotion stuff. So within the next 2 months, the books will be out. And I've already decided I really don't care, Philip, who believes him or who doesn't, because that's not my job. My job is to get that information out there for my friend so that it won't be lost when he dies. And so the haters can come on. I don't really care. The information is going to be more than most people can even fathom or understand or want to believe. But that's not my problem. My problem is to be a witness, to be someone that takes down this information for posterity. So I will be so glad when I can go into detail and talk about all this stuff. So I'll be glad to come on your show. But anybody that's interested, just find me on Facebook.
Yeah, and we'll help you promote and advertise the book. We do that with other authors. If there's any new projects coming forward, and my twin brother has said that he'd come on the next program with you. He's been a little bit tied up. But, Debra, it's been an absolute honor to have you on Twin Souls. And I've literally been spellbound and amazed by your incredible stories that come from your heart. And I really empathize with that. So, I urge our listeners to go out, check Debra Jayne East out. And of course, the 2 new books that will be coming out very soon. And I just wish you once again, Debra, a wonderful success with that. We'll have you back on again. I've really enjoyed the show. It's been really so smooth and so lovely to talk to you. And thank you for coming on board.
Thank you so much, Philip. And it has been a pleasure. I look forward to coming back on. Okay.
And, that ends our show. And you've been listening to Twin Souls in association with the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Your host, Philip Kinsella, and also the wonderful Debra Jayne East. Good night, watch the stars, and be safe.